Welcome back, guys. Welcome to part 2 of cellular structure and function. So we're going to pick right up with the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Remember, we just did the rough, and it's rough because it was studded with ribosomes. But this one is smooth, so it does not have ribosomes. Now, sometimes this one gets confused a little bit with the Golgi, so don't let that confuse you, which I believe is coming up here in a little bit, so don't let that confuse you. But we're going to color in this pink, so get your pink ready. But it's got a couple of functions. So it is going to produce and store lipids. Okay, so if you remember from last week, remember our lipids are our fats. So it's going to produce and store lipids. And then it's also going to be involved with detoxification. So that's kind of cleaning stuff out. So especially like with drugs, alcohol, that kind of stuff. So we're going to shade that in pink. So it comes right off your rough ER. So if we're looking at the animal cell, it would be all of this. Okay. Again, I hope your coloring's a little bit better than mine. Okay. And then if we're looking at our plant cell, it would be all of these little membranes here. Okay. Okay. So that is your smooth ER, produces and stores lipids and involved with detoxification. Ribosomes. We've already mentioned these a couple of times already in this video, but just to kind of reiterate, their function is to make protein. So ribosomes make proteins, okay? And we're not going to be coloring these in, that would be too tricky, but we can find them in two places. They can either be attached to the rough ER, okay, so attached to the rough ER, or they can just be floating in the cytoplasm. Okay, so the cytoplasm is just that clear liquid in the cell that kind of holds everything together. So let me get my little arrow here. So if you see, these are all ribosomes here that are attached to your rough ER. But also you see these little dots kind of out here in the cytoplasm. Those are also ribosomes. Okay, so all these small little dots. So ribosomes can be in one of two places. They can either be attached to the rough ER or just free floating in the cytoplasm. And just remember that they make proteins. The next thing is your Golgi apparatus. I've seen a couple different ways this is said. I've seen like Golgi body, Golgi complex, Golgi apparatus. And to be honest with you, if you just remember Golgi, we're in good shape, okay? So its function is to package and send proteins. So what happens is, remember our ribosomes make proteins. So once they make them, they get sent to the Golgi and they get packaged up. And so then the Golgi will send them off where they need to go. So it could be somewhere in that cell. It could be somewhere in another cell. But basically it will package it up and send them off. This is something that gets very confusing with the smooth ER because they look very similar. To me, this looks a lot like a stack of pancakes. It tends to be a little tighter organized than the smooth ER. So you're going to color this light blue, and it is just this. So again, if you've only got one blue, just kind of lightly shade. So it's going to be this guy on our animal, and then this guy on our plant cell. Okay, so those are our Golgi apparatus. It just packages and sends off proteins. And then the last one for this video is your vesicles, okay? So again, we're not going to label these. Sometimes a lot of these like small circular objects kind of are hard to label on a cell. So this one we're not going to label, but as long as you know its function. So a vesicle is kind of, think of this like a vehicle, okay? It's going to transport materials around the cell, okay? Transport materials around the cell, okay? So normally it's like nutrients, things like that. So it can transport around a cell. It can actually like merge with the cell membrane and like release all of its stuff so other cells can get it. So it can do that too, but it basically just moves around through that cytoplasm and transports things throughout the cell. This is the last one for this video. You'll see on your sheet that there's multiple videos to watch. It'll only let me do so long. So please get caught up. Make sure you're through vesicles on your sheet and your coloring sheet, and join me for part 2 of cell structure and function. The next organelle is the mitochondria. I think this is the most recognized and familiar one. It is often known as the powerhouse of the cell. Powerhouse of the cell. So this one's associated with energy. So it is actually going to break down sugars to release energy, okay? And that process is known as cellular respiration. And again, we're going to get to that in a few weeks. But the process of breaking down sugar and food to get energy is the job of the mitochondria. Now, depending on how active a cell is or area of the body can depend on how many mitochondria they have. So something like a muscle cell is going to have way more mitochondria than a skin cell. So to me, they look kind of like jelly beans. So here's one here in our animal cell. Here's another one. Looks like there's one over here. Okay. We go over to our plant cell. There's one here. One here. Okay. Those are your mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. The last organelle for this video is a vesicle. A good way to remember this or think of this is kind of like a vehicle. Its main job is to transport nutrients and materials throughout the cell. So it moves through all that cytoplasm and will transport things throughout the cell. If it needs to get stuff out of the cell, it will merge with the cell membrane or plasma membrane to dump all the contents out of the cell. So that is a vesicle. This is another one of those things that looks like a small circle or sphere, so it's hard to label or color necessarily. So for the moment, we'll just keep it on our chart for functions. So that is the end of part 2. So please be sure you continue on to part 3 to finish these up.